In the last chapter, we already have seen primitive data type, which are nothing but string, number, boolean, and undefined. And if you're coming from a C#.NET background, primitive data type must have felt very similar to what we used to do or what we basically use in C#, right? Now, when it comes to talking about non-primitive one, they are basically nothing but objects. In JavaScript, object is a complex data type which has got the property, and that property represents key and value pair. If you see here, everything you see out here comes under object. Whether it's a plain key value pair or an array or a function, even date comes under object type. So let's click to Visual Studio and see how it actually being implemented in JavaScript. And also, guys, a very important point is object cannot be understood completely if you don't understand how it actually works with different operators and how JavaScript handles the memory. All these things combined together will make real impact when we are going to learn about, let's say closure and advanced JavaScript topic, which maybe after 2 to 3 chapter we will be there. So understanding this is going to be very important and crucial. So let's pay a very deep attention out here. Let's flip to Visual Studio to see how it actually works on the non-primitive data type in JavaScript is nothing but an object. That object holds a property which is defined as key value pair. And an object is always a collection of related value. So what I mean is, let's say if you have defined a variable called instructor, if you just give a name, then it is primitive data type. But the moment you give that inside a curly braces with multiple values, right? As we just talked about, the properties are defined as key value pair. So how we actually give them? So if the moment you give a name, this will be a key, and that key will be holding a value. Channel is going to be another key that will also going to hold a value. All these things collectively becomes properties, and that object holds the reference of these values. Okay. One more thing, if you see, but currently the code is not formatted, right? If you press Control Shift F, now it will be formatted. It happened because if you remember, we downloaded an extension called Prettier, right? If you haven't already, make sure you keep it installed because it's going to help us while writing the JavaScript code. Now, now since we are accessing the property which is name from this instructor object, let's try to log it in the console and see what log is to offer to us. It gives us the name. So using the key name from the object, we get we are able to access the values of that particular key, which is nothing but property that is represented in key value pair. Now moving to the next object. Now let's talk about second type of object, which is an array. If you are coming from a C# background, you know arrays are collection of similar data type, right? But in JavaScript, array elements do not have to be always of same data type. It can store different data types like integer, string, boolean, and everything. To see an example, this is a perfectly valid array in JavaScript, which is obviously not true for object-oriented programming. So arrays are dynamic and mutable, means values can change as well. Arrays in JavaScript are dynamic and mutable. What it means is once you have declared an array and assigned values out there, you can increase the size of this array without having to do much. All you need to do is to use these push and pop method. Ignore these method what they do, but basically the point is arrays can increase in size dynamically, and they are mutable as well. What it means is whenever you have defined an array and initialize its values, you can change the value whenever you want to. So that's what the difference you see coming from a C# background. In C#, arrays are first of all fixed length and it can only hold similar data type. But arrays in JavaScript has got a completely different way. It is dynamic in nature, it is mutable, means value can change, and also it can hold multiple data types in the same array. Right? Now let's move on to the third type of object. Now since we've already seen what are primitive data types and what are non-primitive data types in JavaScript, let me tell you there is one more object which is represented in JavaScript as function. But we will not cover it here. We will dedicate a separate chapter for function because make sure, remember this line, whenever something you're discussing with anyone regarding function, the function is a first class citizen in JavaScript, exactly the way classes are for us in C Sharp, right? So now it's time to learn about operators. Operators are one of the most important thing when the decision about the memory management comes into the picture. Where exactly that value is going to be stored, either on stack or heap. We'll come to that. So let's understand operators first, and then we'll go and bind everything together. How Primitive data types behave differently with the same kind of operator, and the same operator will behave completely differently when it comes to non-primitive data type. So by understanding this operator, I mean, these are very easy. Most of the operators you already know, but understanding how they work in different environment will change everything the way you're gonna use in projects. Okay, so let me run this and show you what value we get. In the first, what do you think the value will be? And what will be the value in the second time? Try to think and answer this because these are the concepts which are basically without even you realizing is going to build a very strong foundation when you're going to learn the advanced topic in JavaScript. So let me run and see what value we get. One is true when we are comparing with double equals to, and it is giving false when we are using triple equals to. The reason being because in double equals to the comparison is happening between values. So this is also 10, this is also 10. Now in triple equals to, it is also looking at the reference, which we are going to talk about just in a bit. That's where I was talking about that, primitive and non-primitive data type behaves very differently, and the memory management completely changes with different operators. Okay. So now it has time to come back and understand the memory management inside JavaScript based on primitive and non-primitive behavior. In primitive data type, the value is going to be stored directly on the stack. But when it comes to non-primitive data type, the object which is going to refer to that reference will be stored on stack, but the actual object reference will be stored on heap. On stack, only the reference variable which is going to point out to that particular object will be stored, but the actual object will be stored on. So this is a general thumb rule which you must remember. Okay. As of now, we have already seen primitive data type, non-primitive data type, operators. Now it's very important we go ahead and learn something about memory management in JavaScript. In JavaScript, there are two areas where our memory is managed. One is stack, one is heap. How these two differ, where exactly our variable and its value is going to stored, decides a lot of things. So before we wind up this chapter, let me give you a few example, and then we will go through few common interview question which often comes up. Topic, not exactly the questions, but the topic we will discover which often comes during the conversation in an interview around JavaScript and in general, Angular or React, whichever application you're working and when you're trying to justify these kind of question, which I'm going to cover in a minute, will often comes up. I've seen. So when it comes to talking about the primitive data type, the value and the object which is pointing to that value will be stored on the same place, and that is stack. But when it comes to object, the reference will be taking only the reference in the sense the address. This person is an object reference variable. Same for this. Age is also a reference variable. It is not directly object, right? Age is just a reference variable. Person also is a reference variable, which actually points to the reference, means the address where this object is actually stored. Okay, so variable stored a reference, not the object itself. Means this person, the reference variable, will not store the value, name, root. It will only store the reference, means the address of that object. So this, I hope this makes things very clear here. Now let's go through few questions which often comes in during the interview. Now you can expect these kind of discussion during interview. So if let's say you are given a code snippet where let x equals to this, okay, this is an object, correct? This value is pointing to 10. Now which one will be stored where? Means question will be where exactly this x is going to point out. So the answer is this x will be stored on stack, and this x will be only storing the reference of that object, means the address where this particular value 10 is stored. That's all. And that value or the object is actually going to be stored on heap, which we have just talked about. Now, the second condition could be let y equals to x. Okay, what is happening here? Y is pointing to x, right? And x will have its own value. So forget about it for now. X is going to point to a reference. X will have its own address, and Y will be pointing to the same address which X is pointing to. Correct? So there is no new object needs to be created, right? Both of them will be pointing to the same address, same memory location. Now, third state could be, let's say, Y dot value equals to 2. So what happens here? X will have a address, obviously. Now Y will be pointing to the same address where X is pointing to. But on that particular address, if you change the value, both value will change. The value of x as well, y as well. Why? Because both of them are pointing to the same memory location. And that's where the value becomes same. So you can be asked to, what will be the output of this particular console and all. These kind of question you can expect sometimes. The next chapter is going to be the last chapter of fundamentals of JavaScript. After that, we will be moving towards the advanced topic and asynchronous JavaScript. Those are very important before you get into Angular or React. We will be learning both, but understanding uh, the JavaScript basics we will be done for next chapter, and then we'll move on to the advanced JavaScript, and then at the last we will be doing asynchronous JavaScript. But before we wind up, let me give you the final question of this chapter, which often comes up in an interview. So suppose you have a const variable which is of type object, and that object holds name as a property and the value a. Now this user will be on stack, right? This object reference variable will be stored on stack, and that will be holding the address of this object. Now, if you might be given a code where the the value of name is going to be changed to p. Now you will be asked to either to console or reply or basically answer the question that what do you think, whether this name will be changed to b or not. The answer is yes. The trouble is, if you remember, the const doesn't allow you to change the value. Const variables are immutable, but the object inside it is not. We can make changes out here. If let's say user was pointing directly to a variable, sorry, a value, then you couldn't have go ahead and change it. But since it is inside the object, this reference will be intact. This user will be always going to point out to the address of this object, but the value inside those object can be replaced because that is not part of const variable directly. Because const variable is responsible the responsibility of const is to be immutable on its object reference variable, not what is inside any object which it is pointing to. So I thought it is worth giving you the hint. But after that, let's in the next chapter understand about the functions, scopes, loops, and all those things, and that will be the our wind up chapter of basics of JavaScript. After that, we'll go into the advanced topic and then asynchronous topic. So make sure you have already understood everything which we have discussed here. Thank you very much.